Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, her website taxpayer.com. Welcome back to the show, Kris.
Thank you so much.
Kris, voter fraud is coming up in the news, of course. We have an election underway in BC. We never know when the Trudeau government might pull the plug. Mm-hmm. The election in the U.S. is just weeks away. How concerned should people be about voter fraud, especially mail-in ballots? Do you have any experience there to tell us about?
I do. I have experience being a scrutineer, actually. In the 2015 federal election, I was a scrutineer. And as long as you go through all the proper steps with Elections Canada or your corresponding provincial authority, you can be a scrutineer. And actually, each individual party, political party, will often have at least one scrutineer in all of the major returning stations. And so that means that you're standing there alongside of Conservatives, NDP, Green, Bloc Québécois, no matter which region you're in Canada. And what they do is it's a really simple yet clear system. They will literally walk over with this sealed ballot box that is now full of all the properly folded up ballots. They'll watch you and you watch them. They cut it open and they dump it all on the table. And then they sort them. And everybody stares at all the ballots as you go. You basically keep your hands behind your back. You're observing. And then the ballot counters, the official Elections Canada volunteers and workers, they will literally put them into piles and then they count them. And if you see something that is completely wrong, like it's spoiled, they've got, Pee Wee Herman written on there, or all of them are crossed out, those are obvious issues of spoiled ballot. But then there are some that are simply mistakes, where the person has put a check mark, for example, instead of an X, or an X when it should have been a check mark, or they've circled the person's name. And that's when you can have a discussion whether or not the intention of the voter was true and earnest to vote for whomever is on that ballot and is marked. And so it's quite the process, but it's so simple. And it's all on paper, and it's all with pens and pencils, and you can see it with your own eyes. And, Elections Canada, Elections BC, our system is one of the best in the world. And so much so that Canadians often go overseas as observers for other international elections in different countries for that reason.
Now, BC, we've heard already that over 800,000 mail-in ballots have been requested. I requested one, and it didn't have the names of any candidates or parties on it. Mm-hmm. You had to fill in the name of the candidate and the party. And I'm wondering, what if I misspell the name of the candidate? Is that going to be rejected? What if it's outside the big narrow box that they had to put the candidate's name and the party's name? What would be accepted? And what if I just put in Firstenow or Horgan or Wilkinson, the name of the leader, but not the party or the person who's actually running in my riding?
That's a great question.
Would that be rejected?
Great question. So based on my experience as a scrutineer, I actually started reading up on this because I'd never heard of blank ballots before. And so what I've read, and again, I encourage everybody, phone Elections BC if you have any questions when you're filling out your ballot. I heartily encourage you to do so. That's literally their job, and they're delighted to hear from you. Like, they love doing this. So what I've read is you need to either put in the local candidate's name and or their party in the proper space. You cannot write in the leader of the party's name unless you happen to be in John Horgan's local riding or Andrew Wilkinson's local riding or Sonia Firstenow's local riding. So apparently it is the candidate's name and or their party, but you can't write in the leader of the party's name.
What if I requested more than one ballot? I just kept phoning them saying, oh, no, I didn't get my ballot. Can I get another?
They have good checks and balances on those things. Each ballot, usually, from my experience, has a number on it. And so they cross-reference the number to the mailed address. And so, yeah, the likelihood of that is low, but it's something we need to keep an eye on, especially as we march into the future. If we ever get into electronic ballots or online voting or something like that, it's something that we're really going to have to keep an eye on, because right now, from what I understand, people really like this simple paper ballot because it's very clear and it's something that you can't mess with.
And I know from talking to the author of the Black Box Voting Fraud that even if somebody had multiple ballots, they can tell by using handwriting analysis AI whether the same person made all those different X's. You're going to make, even if you thought you were making them look different, the pressure used and so on. So if you really wanted to use CSI to scrutinize a paper ballot that's been written on, you can tell a lot about the person who did it and whether one person filled out a bunch of ballots.
And if you got into a riding where somebody won by just a handful of votes, maybe they would bring in technology like that. And in those cases, if somebody contests the vote, obviously all of the ballots are kept every single time when you finish doing your count for the night, and they're all sealed again. And what they would do is they would bring in more scrutineers and they would do a recount, like under very, very clear scrutiny. But I have to stress, the scrutineering that I saw being done, like, everybody takes it so seriously. Like, you need to sign a solemn pledge. This is a very important responsibility. And everybody I know that's worked in and around elections, when it comes to the actual ballot box, they take it, it's almost sacred. It's a very, very important duty. So it's something to keep an eye on.
Would the same process be used for mail-in ballots, where you'd still have scrutineers when the mail-ins are opened and dumped on the table?
You'd have to. Yeah, you'd have to. I haven't personally watched mailed-in ballots as far as I know, because they all looked the same to me. So at the federal level, if they all were exactly the same, maybe I wouldn't have known if that happened to have been a box full of mailed-in ballots. But as far as I understand, yeah, you have to have the same level of scrutineers. And keep in mind also in parties as well. So if you're voting for the new leader of the Green Party or the new leader of the NDP or what have you, it's usually a very similar system. And same thing, you'll have scrutineers from the different campaign teams and then an outside observer sitting there counting in two piles. It's literally being observed by human eyes.
Now, at the start of the interview, I might have said 800,000 plus people have requested it. I think that might be the projection for how many people. I think the official number is something like 680,000 people have requested mail-in ballots as of a couple of days ago. But you can see with people being told, the government's telling you don't gather in closed buildings, and I don't know of any open-air voting anywhere in BC.
It's a huge demand. From everything I've read, it looks like it's going to be record numbers of people voting by mail, which makes me, as a political nerd, super curious as to when will we know who won. Will it be election night? Will we have to wait like 36 or 72 hours? Like, that's kind of crazy.
Well,
so we'll have to wait and see.
They don't count the mail-ins until 2 weeks later to make sure you haven't voted twice.
Oh, interesting. 2 weeks.
2
Gosh,
weeks.
We're going to have to be more patient than that. Maybe will we know by Christmas?
Well, yes, and then if there's recounts and so on.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, because the NDP had an agreement with the BC Green Party, and the Green Party with them, not to call a vote of non-confidence, and then John Horgan ripped it up. If they're in the same situation again with the Greens and they have a choice to team up with the NDP or the Liberals, who do you think they're going to go with? The party that broke their promise or the one that hasn't made any promises?
Great question. It all depends, if I just put on my commentary hat here, it all depends on what they can live with. So, could the Greens live with a party that fully embraces twinning the Trans Mountain Pipeline, for example, as the BC Liberals do? Or will they be satisfied with dealing with their last partner, the NDP, which supports coastal gas up north, which is natural gas, which they also oppose? So it all depends on how much the Greens are able to compromise and or hold their nose. So we'll have to see, but that's a really, really good question. We'll also have to see what factor. I've already been seeing, for example, some BC Liberal ads going across online warning people not to vote for the BC Conservative Party, saying that it was because of them and because of their votes that cost them, quote unquote, the last election. So it's quite the dogfight right now.
Right, and then you still have other parties involved in the BC election.
Yes.
The Christian Heritage Party and so on. And although the People's Party of Canada, I don't think, is involved provincially. And do we have any people in BC trying to promote BC maybe joining Alberta and Saskatchewan as a separate country?
We sure do. Funny you should mention that. I was just looking that up the other day because I was writing up the fact that, oh, by the way, taxpayer dollars are paying for all this nonsense. The election ads, the attack ads, the junk mail, the lawn signs, $27 million of it, taxpayers' money, is going to these parties. And so I looked up all the different parties in BC. There is a BC Wexit party. And it's officially registered, and they're running candidates. I think they're running 4 last time I checked. There's also the BC Communist Party. I did not see the BC Marijuana Party on that list, but maybe they haven't updated it yet.
Or perhaps they're just too busy partying.
Who knows? Maybe it's mission accomplished for them because cannabis is legal now. I'm not sure. But it's funny you mentioned that. There is a BC Wexit Party.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Value from success, growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, a lot of the conversation I see online is about the rising cost of food, how everything seems to cost more. And we do know if you go out now, if you get your nails done, they charge you $3 or $5 more because they can't have as many customers in the store. Restaurants have added another $3 to $5 to their bills because they can't have enough customers to keep their business going if they had their regular number. But what about this secret carbon tax that the Trudeau government's talking about? A 30% clean fuel standard charge.
Yes, this is a big deal. And the reason why it's a big deal is, number one, because they're putting it through without really much conversation. And number two, we're dealing with it here already in BC. So you remember back when Premier John Horgan was completely mystified as to why gas prices were so high in British Columbia. He just couldn't understand why. Meanwhile, he was increasing the carbon tax and opposing the twinning of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which would deliver more gasoline products down to the Lower Mainland. So he was ignoring the fact that he was taxing it and kind of ignoring the fact of supply and demand and wondering aloud, why are our gas prices so high? So he called an inquiry. But he wouldn't allow the inquiry to look into actions of government. And then they found at the end of their study that there was this mysterious 13-cent inexplicable difference. That it was about 13 cents than they could explain, higher than they could explain. A huge chunk of that was because we have a low carbon fuel standard, it's basically a form of carbon tax, so I would describe it that way, but it's at the producer level. It's not at the pump level. And of course, all of those costs trickle down and they come right out the nozzle of your gas tank. So it is around between 10 and 13 cents is what Dan McTagg, who's a petroleum analyst and expert in this, adds to the cost of your liter of gasoline here in BC. Now, federally, they're going to do the same thing. It's going to be around that amount. People are ballparking it between 10 and 15 cents. Big question I have for BC taxpayers and commuters who use gasoline and diesel, is this going to be now on top of our BC carbon tax, our low carbon fuel standard, and now this is a new one? That's going to be like 30 cents. That's a lot of extra tax on that.
And of course, so people are worried about high food costs and saying, well, what does a carbon tax have to do with that?
Oh.
Well, you explain.
Huge. Let's start at the farm level. So while we here in British Columbia don't grow a lot of wheat, our farmers sure grow a lot of tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff like that, and that is usually grown in greenhouses, and they almost exclusively use natural gas. Ding, ding, ding. Natural gas has a carbon tax on it, and they pay a lot of money. Then when we go out for things like bread, right, or corn, for example, that is fed to animals for our livestock, that is grown across the prairies. What's interesting, and I didn't know this until a few years ago, is that farmers dry their grain product and their oil seeds and all that stuff in these huge, like, commercial dryers. It's gigantic. Those run on natural gas. Jim, I saw a couple of the bills from these farmers when they were first hit with the carbon tax, thousands of dollars in just the carbon tax that they were using for their natural gas to dry food to feed us. And so, of course, they're going to have to pass that cost along down the line. So if you're noticing groceries going up, a huge factor in that could be things like the carbon tax, because it's costing the farmers that much more. And that's, of course, not even touching tractors, combines, all that stuff. This was just the drying of the grain.
And we also have a government that says it wants to declare plastic toxic. Well, if it's recycled, I don't see what the problem is. And I'm just looking in my office. All my amplifiers are in plastic cases with plastic knobs. My cell phone is covered in plastic. The telephone is plastic. The light is plastic. Am I supposed to have a bamboo covered cell phone? And what about the metal parts in there? A lot of them are held in place with plastic. What's the alternative?
Great point. So first up, I would highly recommend people who are interested in this to go to secondstreet.org. It's a relatively new think tank here in Canada, and we know the folks who are running it. They did a really cool study on, okay, let's do a thought experiment. What if we kept it in the ground, quote unquote, tomorrow? Like, fine, what will we do? How could we have alternatives? And the stats are pretty staggering. So for things like plastic, you're right. Anybody who's listening, just wherever you are, if you're on the treadmill, if you're listening in your car, you're in transit, look around you. Almost everything around you, including the phone in your hand, has a ton of plastics in it. And if it doesn't have plastic in it, quite often it was delivered to you also using plastics. That's not even mentioning the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, which has been largely protected. We've had PPE that is made of plastic fibers, all the plexiglass around you. Like, I can just imagine what it would be like to try to run our healthcare system without plastics. And when you bring up bamboo, that's a great question. The idea of trying to replace all the stuff that we have now made of plastic with quote-unquote natural things like wool or animal products, bamboo, things like that, that's very, very hard on the environment because you have to grow it, and then you need to harvest it, and then you need to process it, and then you often need to ship it because it isn't made here. So you really need to think past what just the object is in your hand and what it's made out of, and what went into making it. How much of an impact on the environment did that thing have in water, in energy, in transportation in order to arrive on your store shelf? And what can you afford to pay for it? And your issue about recycling is interesting, because I started looking into this back when I first found out that Metro Vancouver wanted us all to start using a communal pool of sippy cups. They want to get rid of disposable cups completely, and they want us all sharing. And they want to force these small restaurants and corner stores to buy industrial-sized dishwashers for us to hand in our sippy cups and then take out new ones. To me, that sounds a little crazy. So I started doing research into it, and tons of plastics manufacturers, they call it a closed system. They want a closed loop of plastic, so that they're not constantly making more. They're simply making their original stuff and then recycling it over and over and over again. That seems to make sense, and it keeps people safe.
Alberta said it wanted to, change, its oil and gas industry to something more modern. So they're saying, well, okay, we'll make plastic and we'll make hydrogen fuel. And now people are dumping on them for that. Does that make sense? Great point.
And again, this is something that if you don't have friends and family in Alberta, try to adopt some and try to start understanding what things are like there. They're bad. Things are bad over there, and it's because of actions like this. So you're right. They were told, hey, try to diversify a bit. Don't just do oil sands. Do more with what you have. So do value added, right? And they started doing that. You're right. And then they turn around, the federal government, and try to declare something as, that surrounds us so much and we depend on so much and as basic as plastic as toxic. And they were even trying to align it. I was reading in Blacklock's Reporter, they were trying to equate it with things like asbestos. Like, just makes you shake your head. So what are we saying then to the folks who are struggling and trying to get back up on their feet and retool and learn to code, so to speak, within natural resource sectors in Alberta? Is anything good enough? When are they going to be satisfied at the federal level when it comes to things like natural resources, including things like plastics, which is a natural resource?
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, do you cringe when you hear that Ottawa is thinking about imposing a wealth tax or more basically, I think, going after the equity in the home that you paid for and worked hard for and thought, well, I finished my mortgage payment. I can either use the equity in my home to help me with my retirement, or at least I just don't have to pay a mortgage anymore. Now it sounds like they want to tax you for actually having been responsible and built a home for your family and a place to retire.
Yes, this is a huge thing that is looming on the horizon. And we keep getting signals out of Ottawa. It's kind of like one of those things, those static electricity balls, where if you put your finger near it, it suddenly channels into it with energy. We're getting all those sorts of sparks and leaps coming from Ottawa, signaling that they're thinking of a wealth tax and or a home tax based on your primary residence. So wealth tax, that sounds cool. Let's just go soak a billionaire and make him or her pay for everything. But it's not that simple. Wealth taxes, a lot of people will be surprised if they fall under it, because quite often what they do is they add up the value of every single one of your assets, including the home that you're living in right now, maybe a cottage that you co-own with your brother-in-law or something, maybe a boat, a camper, anything like that, like anything that is in your possession. The tax man will then tally that up and decide what your net worth is and your wealth, and then tax you on it. And keep in mind, number one, that's your stuff, and you've already paid for it. So if you've built your house, you've already paid 6 days and Sunday different types of taxes on the stuff that you used to build that house. If you bought your house, you've already paid taxes on that house. You've already paid property taxes on that house. Same thing with your car. If you have all that stuff, you've already paid taxes on it. But they'll still add that up and try to get you for it with a wealth tax. And this also ties in as well with the estate tax or a death tax. Same sort of thing. So keep in mind, if you're, say, an older boomer, or you're a bit older than that, and you've got these assets, and you're planning what's going to happen when you're no longer here, you usually will give that to your descendants, to your children and your grandchildren. But if the tax man comes after you now with a wealth tax, are you going to hang on to all those assets? Or are you going to spend all of it as much as you can, or head to Florida or somewhere else to get away from that kind of a level of a tax? Also, if it is an asset, an estate tax or a death tax, same thing. Why is it the government's right to take that money that you've worked hard to save up for, that you've already paid taxes on, including on your income, and take it for themselves instead of giving it to your children and grandchildren for them to use? Maybe that's the difference between your kids actually affording a house eventually in a place like Vancouver or Toronto, or your grandkids going to that trade school or not. This is your money and your family's money. And so the idea that the government would come sniffing around for it is pretty abhorrent. Same sort of thing goes with right now what's happening with this study going on about taxing your primary residence. A lot of people, like you said, that's their nest egg. It's something they've worked really hard to be able to afford, to be able to pay off. They're counting on it fully for their retirement. They'll either take out a reverse mortgage, and that's what they're literally going to live on, or they're going to sell it and downsize dramatically, even though that's getting harder and harder now with the price of housing, and that's what they're going to live on for the retirement. Not everybody has a couple of pensions coming from the government. A lot of people who have been small business owners or worked on their own ticket, their home is their main asset. And so these are all major taxes that are on the horizon. And what was really shocking is I think it was based on the wealth tax. If they put in the stat was crazy. If they put in the wealth tax based on what numbers we have right now, at the rate the feds are spending, they will blow through that tax in a week. So this is not, a do or die whether or not we can save our healthcare system based on this. No. It would simply impoverish and anger a lot of people, and we'd have nothing to show for it.
One of the things revealed in the Panama Papers, if people can remember back just a few years ago, how many rich people had sheltered their fortune from taxes in Panama. Well, there were a number of former Canadian prime ministers who had sheltered their money there. We're not saying they did anything illegal, but if they had, Canada was one of the few countries that didn't go after the people who had sheltered their money from taxes in Panama.
This is the other thing, is if you start coming after honest, earnest people who have their own money that they've earned and their property, and you start treating them as if they're just hanging out or renters or there by default or at the grace of the state, they will try to keep as much of that money as they can. They could move their money offshore, they could do all sorts of things with it, rather than hanging on to it and reinvesting it in their community or handing it down to their children and grandchildren. And that way the wealth stays where it is, in Canada.
I mean, I'm thinking if they start doing it, what if you sold your home to a corporation that you just happen to own and you leased it back to yourself so you can deduct all the expenses?
Just imagine having to go through all of this just to stop the taxman from coming after something as important and fundamental as the house you live in. We're getting crazy now. So this is why we need to sound the alarm on this stuff, and the feds need to back down. And if they're actually planning on implementing a tax on your primary home, they need to have the courage to come out and say so. They can't pretend they're not going to do it.
Kris, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you so much for caring.
Is there a website or an email people can go to if they have concerns about some of the things we've talked about?
Absolutely, and we love hearing from people, and if they want to research more of this stuff, it's all on our website at taxpayer.com.
And Kris, are you affiliated with any political party?
No, we actually are not allowed to carry any political party memberships. That goes for us, the directors, and our board. And
I've never belonged to anything organized either.
Hey, we were journalists. we're as organized as we can be.
Yeah. I was going to say media conspiracy. We couldn't even agree on what color of carpet to get at the media club.
No, or lunch. What are we going to have for lunch? No, there's no conspiracy.
There's no we're not organized enough. Kris, thank you so much.
Thank you.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Again, her website, taxpayer.com. If you have any questions for Kris or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.